Well, thank you for the opportunities to come and visit with you. I truly appreciate your role as a mother. You have a lot of responsibility on your plate. Being a father of four kids, I know a little bit about it. I'm not going to dare step into that and say I know a lot about the challenges of dealing, especially with young kids. But I will say this, and our first two were born pretty close together. And I remember Susie often saying, will I ever survive this stage? But we can honestly say this time in your life will truly pass, and your children, God willing, become productive members of society. So, but you have a tremendous responsibility in your kids and your family and your role not only as a parent, but many of you are also managers of your household. So you have a great amount of responsibility, and your kids being some of your greatest investments as time comes along. So this last Sunday, Pastor Jeff started a series on some key issues that men face, and also some tools of how to walk through those issues. So I asked my youngest son, Luke, give me some thoughts. What were you thinking? What are some things you learned from this sermon today? And he said, well, I need a good wife. And boy, he said it right on the head. I mean, make the first decision is your relationship with Christ. Second most important decision is your life mate. And I definitely made the best choice for me with Susie, both beautiful inside and outside, and she is definitely the true helpmate and a godly woman. So a little bit about myself and my role. I'm a personal family financial advisor, and it really kind of separates into three categories, if you will. There's the technical side of it as an advisor, which you probably see most of that on the surface with my industry, with the aspects of investments and so forth. But there's two other key elements in my role. That of leadership. In many instances, sitting together with a family, with a couple, with an individual, it's a process of leading them to the next step, and sometimes that next step might be a step of fear, so leading them in that direction. The third aspect of what I do is that of being a coach / counselor. Many times I become the third party with couples especially that may have never dove into some honest conversations about their financial picture. And I offer really an outside opinion and an outside observation of what truly is going on behind the scenes there. But also as a coach, no matter how great a plan you have, there's always going to be some bumps in the road. So I usually serve as an encourager in that. So I got into the industry primarily with a larger financial firm, but over time felt like it was necessary for me to step out and launch my own firm as an independent. And it just allowed me to be in a position where I wasn't always representing the large firm. I'm able to represent the client and how we work through an individual's financial plan. So, and Getty Financial is the name of my organization. I'll tell you a little bit about the name as time goes on. So, well, let me ask the question to you. Has anybody here ever been lost? Or is that only a man thing? What are some of the feelings when you've been in that position that you felt like?
Helpless.
Helpless?
Despair.
Despair?
Panic.
Panic, yes. All the above. Worry and anxiety and so forth. I'll be here, and apparently we're on video, so I'll be the first to admit, and you can use this however many times you want. I have been lost. As a man, I have been lost. Not only have I been lost, but I have been boldly and confidently lost. I'm an urban person, but I live in Kingsley, Iowa, and some of my clients live out in these rural areas that are deep out there in the flat tundra of Iowa. So at night, earlier when we first moved back here, at night it gets really dark out there, and there is absolutely no landmark around that I can recognize outside of a little light, and I have no clue whose farm that is. So I have found myself a couple of times just boldly and confidently feeling I am heading in the right direction going home. And little did I realize, I ended up right back where I started on some of these places. Not close, but in my car, first thing I look, it's like, oh yes, good, I am alone. Nobody knows that I just did that. But I quickly get my bearings, and then I start heading what I firmly believe, again, is the right direction. So, but there's several reasons why you can get lost. One is just having a bad map. Maybe it's out of date, maybe it's the wrong state. Maybe it's a GPS system that you just, that's not up to date in all the little things. We found that out in Washington, D.C. ourselves as a family. You might have a good map, but you just misapplied it. You might have had it pointed the wrong direction, the north or south side of it. Or you might have typed in your coordinates on your GPS system, but you missed the wrong state or just the wrong address. Or most likely, getting lost. I know this could be for me, and it might be for you, just being distracted. Especially when you have kids in the back and you're busy doing this the whole time, keeping them apart. That's one way. Listen to your favorite radio show, or just conversations with your spouse, or whatever the case may be. So, but you can get lost in other areas of life. You can be lost professionally. 80% of people in the latest statistics show that they're unhappy in the profession that they have chosen. You can be lost in relationships. It might be in your marriage. It might be spiritually. It might be being lost morally. You can be lost from an education standpoint. I don't know if any of you face this going through college, but I changed my majors a few times. Not necessarily knowing what I wanted to do, but I at times found myself completely lost because I thought I was choosing something I had to do for the rest of my life. So. But what I really want to visit with you, and what I'm here to help you out a little bit, is in the area of finances, personal finances. Based on statistics, half of America is lost financially. And I think it's actually a lot wider than that, because I think there's a category of people that know they're lost. And then there's a category over here that might be even bigger, where the people are pursuing a certain direction, but they're not to the point. They're boldly, confidently going in that direction, but they're not aware that they are lost in the process. So you already mentioned some of the key things that when you feel you're lost, there's anxiety, there's pressure, whatever the case may be. But here's, if you're out there and you're on cruise control and you're heading one direction, here's some clues that you might be lost financially. If you spend more than you make in a year, you are lost. If you don't know if you're spending more than you make in a year, you're lost. If you owe more on your car than your car is worth, you are lost. If you don't know how much you owe on your car, you are lost. If you think you're paying minimums on your credit card balances is a sound financial decision, you're lost. If you're not sure that you're saving enough, you're lost. If you make plenty of money but you don't know where it's going, you are lost. If you have financial dreams but you actually have no plan to go along with those dreams, you are lost. If you make over $75,000 a year and you're feeling financial pressure, you are lost. And I put this in the context, if you make at least that much, putting the global standards, you're in the top percentile as far as income earners in the world. And I think we get lost in this process as Americans, where we don't realize how much we've been blessed as a nation and individuals with opportunities and resources. And so it ends up becoming a very murky road of determining what is actual needs and what is actual wants. If you're making financial decisions that you hope your spouse never discovers, you're lost. If you're making financial decisions that you hope the IRS does not discover, you're not only lost, but you're in big trouble. If you haven't noticed, our government is looking for extra money because they tend to spend more than they earn. So, getting back to the concept of finding the right directions, we lived in Eastern Europe for a period of time, and our area was at that time called Yugoslavia, and it was under sanctions. So we did much of our business transactions in the neighboring country of Hungary. We went to Budapest, which was a city of about 2 million plus people. Is anybody here fluent in Hungarian? At all? Well, if you've ever even remotely seen the language, there is nothing you can identify with as far as from an English standpoint. In fact, its origins are actually Mongolian. So I knew this wasn't our country of interest as far as our ministry when we were there. So I just was not going to invest a whole lot of time in being fluent in the language other than knowing things like hamburger and such like that. So, but what I did, just to kind of compensate for that, for not knowing the language, not really paying any attention to the streets, is I used certain landmarks to get around this big city. And those landmarks were usually identified with a restaurant that served American-style food. I place value on food. So I had this huge map, and I knew exactly where I was at in the city based on these key landmarks without even reading the road signs. And knowing exactly, well, I know right there's a Mexican restaurant right here. I know according to that, there's a place that serves American-style ribs. I know there's a McDonald's there. So it just made it a big situation that could have been a complete disaster, a little bit easier for me to navigate around. And I think it's the same for our financial side of things. The language out there gets completely confusing. Some of the language is not even necessary. But I want to give to you today 3 key landmarks that you need to program into your financial GPS to get you to your ultimate financial destination. The first one is that of purpose. You've got to have purpose before you even set the plan in place. There's two key things here. Number one is you've got to come to the final conclusion that God owns it all. No matter where you're at spiritually, you're going to come to the conclusion one way or another, because let me just ask this. How much of what you have right now actually goes with you when you leave this world? Absolutely nothing. And but the aspect of God owning it all, it can bring 2 different things. It can bring complete relief that, you know what, if that's God's money, He's in control. He's going to supply what I need it, but He can also take away what I have if I don't use it properly. So Psalms 24, verse 1 says, "The earth is the Lord's and everything in it. The world and all of His people belong to Him." But I also like this verse found in Matthew, and it relates to me as a parent. You know, even though that I know God can take away, if He wants to, my resources, He also has the heart of a loving parent. He says this in Matthew 7:9. He says, "You parents, if your children ask for a loaf of bread, why do you give them a stone instead?" And He is not only, it's the same thing as you being a parent. Do you really want what's best for your kids? I mean, if they're asking for this, are you going to give them something totally wicked and unnecessary on this side of it? So if we come to that conclusion that God owns it all, that's the first step in finding true purpose and what to do with your finances. The second key to that, the second aspect, is to define your values. What is important to you? Values are those qualities and principles that are significant or desirable to you. And when it comes to your personal finances, your values are your emotional payoff. Most planning tends to take place starting with setting goals. But honestly, if you have your values, these are going to be the things that are going to hold true, and you're going to keep them out in the forefront. They're going to motivate you to get you where you want to be. It's really the why behind your plan. The goals are the tangibles, but values are the intangibles. They're the things that are going to keep you from straying off the path. A case in point, I don't know how many of you did family vacations growing up. Our family took one every summer, and some of these trips we drove everywhere. In fact, we were kind of a camping family at that stage, so we had some pretty long road trips. Even if you just go out to the Rockies, I mean, it's just not enjoyable going across Nebraska and Kansas. I know they have their own beauties, but it's just not enjoyable. And I know my mom, probably at the time she did it just to keep from going nuts with herself and my brother and I fighting. But she would often, in the midst of the arduous part of the trip, bring up things. What are we actually going to do when we get to that point? Is it family time? Is it we're going to get to go rock climbing, whatever the case may be. And that's really how these values, when you pull that into your purpose, they're going to be the things that you're going to hold on to during the boring, arduous aspects of dealing with finances. So, the other question is, how do I discover some of these values, especially when it comes to finances? The key question I think you should ask yourself, and if you're getting together with your spouse, is what is important about money to you? It's amazing the answers you can get if you start asking them to yourself or if you ask them to your spouse. More often than not, usually the wife or the gal usually comes to some of the first responses are in the aspect of security. Is that, anybody follow up with that at all? Security, and then you really want to flesh it out. Well, what does that mean, security? Well, it might mean knowing that I can do anything I want with my family. It might mean that I know that I'm going to be okay financially. Usually that's how it ends up directing down the path. And ultimately, that's the most common thing. And for a man, rarely is security the one that comes up in the discussion. It's more of in the aspect of accomplishments. Well, I want to do this. I want to achieve this. And neither one of them are bad, but when you start doing this value discussion together, it really helps you to understand each other in the process. And for me as a husband to know, I need to do what I need to do to make sure my wife feels secure, then I need to accomplish that. And if you know the same thing, and I think through that process, you're also going to find some commonalities between you and your spouse if you're married. And those are going to be the things you're going to hold on together as you continue to move along. So the second thing you need to plug into your GPS is developing a plan. There's three aspects of this. The first thing is assessing your goals or your milestones, per se. I don't know if any of you could relate to this. As a man, when we go on vacations and I get on the road, I have certain milestones in my mind of what we're going to leave at this time. Now, over the years, I've been pretty flexible, a couple minutes or so. But I have objectives and milestones. I want to leave at this time. I want to get to this point to achieve a certain amount of gas mileage. And we cannot have absolutely no bathroom breaks until we get to that point. I've been able to work it. We can go through a couple of states now without pulling over for bathroom breaks. But ultimately, in assessing your goals, I don't want to get into the statistics and so forth, but all of us really know that once you put certain goals in place, the probability of achieving them is much greater than if you don't have any goals at all. So here's a couple of things, maybe off to the side. There's not a blank in there, and for those of you who have got to absolutely have all those blanks filled out, I promise you I'll stay around and make sure you have something in that blank before you leave. But over to the side, here's some part of the process of developing some of these goals. First, I would just start with brainstorming. What are the tangible goals out there that take money and require money to achieve them? And just think, don't restrict yourself in your thinking. Just take a whiteboard and start writing them together all over that thing. The second part of that process is to dream with a deadline in mind. You need to look at, here's this goal, whether it's getting out of debt or if it's retirement or whatever the case may be, or it's having all the funds for college for my kids. You need to put a date on it. And you'd be amazed, for older couples who are looking at down the road towards retirement, they'll tell me, you think you've never thought about it before, but they'll tell me exactly the date they're going to retire, the time. And when you put that date deadline in it really makes it very achievable and motivation to get to that point. Determine how much money that goal is going to require. Don't worry as far as how you're going to get that money first, but just determine how much money you're going to take to get to that goal. And then lastly, this is really where the emotional payoff of it happens. think of 2 or 3 words of what is it going to be like when you achieve that goal. For some people in careers and so forth, it might be total relief. It might be the word freedom, but it really puts meat on the goal per se. So if I'm first brainstorming, I'm dreaming with a deadline, I determine how much money that goal is going to require, and then I put words to describe exactly what is it going to feel like when I get to that point. Some of you may be in a position of debt. What is it going to feel like when you send off that last payment to your mortgage or to your credit card? The second point in the overall goal assessment side of things is once your goals and your milestones are down, you need to take inventory of where you're at. You need to assess your current financial picture. You've got an idea where you want to go. Now let's figure out your starting point for how to get there. The third part of that is after you've done that, you need to prioritize. Honestly, there's only 5 ways you can spend money. You can give it, you can save it, you can pay taxes, you can pay debt, or you can spend it. That's really the 5 things you can do with money. Andy Stanley said it, he kind of brought it down to really 3 key words. It's give, save, and live. But using those key areas, that will help you prioritize your goals there. So, in the third and final item you need to plan into your GPS system to get your financial destination is protection. You've got your values in place, you've got your purpose, you've got your goals. Now you need to protect yourself from being derailed, being distracted from getting to that point. And there's 5, these are really 5 key biblical principles that go along with that. The first one is get out of debt and stay out of debt. You know, some of the biggest causes of whether it's bankruptcy or a significant amount of debt is just not planning for the unexpected. This can be something as major as a premature death of a wage earner in your family. It could be a medical expense, something like that. It could be something as simple as the aspect of a car or 2 breaking down. Usually when something breaks down in your home, it comes in 3s, I'll just tell you that. And usually they're expensive. So that is one aspect of why people end up getting into debt, because they're just not planning ahead and preparing for the unexpected. The other one I think that's really key, especially in our society, is the aspect of discontentment. Whatever you see on TV, even your discussions with friends and so forth, really stirs up the whole attitude of being discontent with what you have. And the new word is not replacement, it's upgrade. And we go through this discussion even with our own kids on little things, whether it's iPod or getting something like, why do you need the next newest thing? What is it going to give you that this one doesn't have? And then determining, is it really worth that to do that? So discontentment is a huge plan killer. Proverbs 22:7 says this: the borrower is slave to the lender. And that's what debt really does. It puts another anchor around your neck to hold you down and to keep you from getting to where you need to be financially. One of the key reasons why I got into this industry, I enjoy many aspects of it, but when we were involved with ministry, we had many friends that wanted to go and do things that they felt God was calling them to do, but they were held captive by a couple of things. Number one was the aspect of debt, and number 2, they just couldn't surrender the aspect of finances and recognize that God owns it all. So they're held captive to it. And it would be my vision for each one of your families that debt is a big issue that you just take captive of it right now. And start by casting a vision. What are you going to do when you have more payments on some of these things? I mean, write that down and the feelings that you'll have to get you out of that. So the second principle to keep you on track is to act your wage. Act your wage. Don't spend more money than you earn. Part of this can be accomplished by creating a budget. Luke 16:10 says, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. So in this process of acting your age, in your conversations together with your spouse or whomever, really dive deep and discover what is true needs and what is true wants. That really comes down to that. And I'll be honest, when it comes down to really defining, it could be something as simple as, do I really need cable TV, or is that more of a need, or is it really a want? Sometimes it really comes down to it as far as finding extra money to pay off debt. Third principle to keep you on track, to keep your plan from being derailed, is to have saving and investing. There's a big misnomer out there, the fact that you cannot out-earn bad decisions. That goes with our government, that goes with us individually in our finances. You can't out-earn that. There's also this misnomer out there that I've seen time and time again. If we have dual incomes, we'll be able to take care of this. And more often than not, it doesn't. You end up spending more money. And so the margins are not even greater. They're usually even narrower. And you're living from paycheck to paycheck with a margin of about $1,000 or $2,000. So the first key in the aspect of saving is to have an emergency fund. I'm telling you this, and that's having at least cash set aside to cover at least 1 month to 3 months to maybe up to 6 months of monthly expenses. And if this becomes a priority, I guarantee this will help you a little bit as a woman in addressing those areas of security, knowing that, I know we're okay this month, I know we're okay next month, and just creating that extra cash margin. And I tell you, the principles that your grandparents told you about saving for a rainy day, it definitely come true. And it will be, as what Dave Ramsey puts at it, it'll be your Murphy repellent. So those, when all things happen in big sets of 3 or whatever, big disasters, you're going to be prepared for it and not be so tempted to put it onto a credit card or anything like that. So save up and pay cash for things. This is definitely not normal in our society. You ask the question why. It's not convenient. A recent study showed that at McDonald's alone, you spend 47% more if you use a credit card than if you pay cash at a place like that. It mentally hurts to hand over dollars you see it being transferred to somebody else. Some studies show that in general you spend 12 to 18% more when you just use plastic. So try to use cash, or if you can. Sometimes debit card is a great aspect of that, but that can definitely help and curtail different spending issues in your family. So a simple rule when it comes to saving and investing, regardless of all the stuff, E-Trade or whatever you hear on TV, there's really a simple rule here. If it's money that you know you're going to need within a 5-year period of time, treat it as savings. Don't worry about risking that in the market or whatever the case may be. It's cash on hand to help. Just treat it as a savings account. If it's money that's 6 years and beyond, that's something you can look at as far as an investment. Something that you can actually put it in an area of risk to grow towards a later date. The fourth thing to keep you from being derailed from your plan is giving. Now I know someone's like, I have absolutely nothing that I could possibly give. But I tell you, giving is just good for your soul. Wherever you're at spiritually, it doesn't matter if you're giving to the church or whatever the case, but just being generous and giving is just a healthy thing to be, a healthy thing for your soul. Look at this example. You might be in a position where you just have all kinds of money, but you just don't give any because you're afraid of losing it. And if you have a tight, clenched fist, I guarantee you nothing is going to come out of there, but nothing is going to be able to get into hand at all, because God wants you to, He doesn't care about your money. He just doesn't want your money to get you. And one avenue that He does to bless us is by having a generous spirit to give to others. It could be as simple as over a Christmas period of time, you're out to eat, and your waitress does not only just a good job, but you decided to give her a whopping tip, $50, $100, and you'll never know how God uses that to bless that person, but I guarantee you'll be blessed right back in the process. So, the fifth and final thing that goes along with Protection is that of maintaining an eternal perspective. Back to the beginning of purpose. God owns it all. He said, trust us all with resources, and He wants to bless us with those resources. And the question that we have to answer is, are we going to address immediate pleasures, or are we going to want to put eternal value in how we use those resources? And in the midst of every money decision, just simply ask yourself, how can I honor God with this decision? If you have that as a criteria, I can guarantee it makes a lot of decisions a whole lot simpler. And it helps you to be very careful in how you use your money. So, in Getty, I don't know, is anybody familiar with the word in Getty? Have you ever heard that before? Yes?
I've heard it, but I haven't
heard it. Actually, it's a name that Susie and I looked at as far as naming our firm. It's an oasis located in the Judean desert in the country of Israel. And if you look back in the history of Israel, there was a man named David who was anointed to be king. And but the existing king just was not happy with that, and he pursued David and his men constantly. So David was in an emotional, unstable time of his life. But he fled to a place called En-Gedi, and it was an oasis with fresh water and everything. And it was there where David found peace and contentment with himself, peace and contentment with God, despite the emotional issues facing around him, despite the physical aspects of a desert being a very dry place. It's the same thing for our finances. My passion is to see families find a financial En-Gedi, a place of contentment. So no matter what happens in the news, no matter what happens in our economy, that you would find contentment with where you're at financially, with yourselves, content with God, and ultimately not only just survive, but you can thrive financially no matter what happens around you. So all these things, purpose, plan, and protection, they all weave together, they all come together. But I'll leave you this. Boils down to this. In Hebrews 12:11 it says, no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. So Dave Ramsey has a really good saying. He says, if you live like no one else now, later on you can live like no one else. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I don't know if we have time for questions, but I'd be happy to field some questions for you. Yes?
In regards to building up savings, would you recommend doing that before starting to get out of debt?
Yeah, usually the first step is to have something, whether you start out for $100 or move it to $1,000 and then address the debt. But as quickly as you can build that cushion, because it just gives you an emotional feeling of, I got a little bit of a cushion here, and then addressing the debt.
Under prioritize, you said there were 5 things that you could do with your money. Could you say those 5 things again?
Yep, you can give, you can save, you can pay taxes, you can pay debt, you can spend it. Honestly, sometimes when we get so lost in our financial situation, our priorities end up being messed up. We end up spending it, then whatever's left over we pay our taxes, or then what's left over we pay our debts. And usually at the very bottom of the list it begins, it's giving. And to just flip it around, using it, giving is the very top. And I tell you, it is so healthy for your soul to give, whatever the case may be. So. Yes?
Interest rates being really so low on savings accounts, where would be the best place to get the most for your money?
You know, it depends on what the purpose of that money is. I mean, if it's in that aspect of something you need within a 5-year period of time, I know it's usually even more difficult for a man because they feel like it can get, I got to have that money really working for me. But I play it safe and say that is cash that I need for the short term.
We're starting to look at saving in college and all that. How much would you say you should save for college?
For college.
Yes, and then like I know there's TA accounts. Would you recommend putting everything into that, or would you recommend just
Into what kind of accounts?
TA accounts? Like,
Yeah, it's different for everybody. But yeah, the question is the aspect of college savings, how much do you put in there? I know firsthand a little bit just from our first one going to college this year, and our second one is next year. Something to keep in mind in college expenses in general, there is close to a 7% inflation rate just for college costs. It has nothing to do with the cost of living around. It's just what they can charge for college. Because ultimately, it's an emotional thing. I mean, don't you really want the best for your kid? That's what they're planning on. And so that's really, you got to keep that in mind. And so, you know, there's different calculators on there. In fact, you can go to my website. There's a college cost calculator on that at gettyfinancial.com. And there it actually factors in what the inflation rates are. So, you know, we're talking $25,000 to $30,000 a year for a private school now, maybe $17,000 to $20,000 for public school. So there's many vehicles out there as well for it. 529 plans are available. And some of those to keep in mind with those is it's the investment vehicles that are available within that. The only thing I would necessarily, and some of them we have them for the state, which can provide, like for the state of Iowa, can provide a nice little tax benefit for that. But one thing I would kind of avoid, unless you're 100% sure where you want your kid to go, is doing an advanced savings with the institution itself. Because once you've done that, your money is with them, and that's where your child's going to go no matter what. So I like keeping your options open with that.
kind of bouncing off that, I was going to ask, what other options? I've heard of people putting money for kids for college in like an IRA or an education. I don't know if a 529 is the same thing as an ESA. Just like what?
Yeah, there's another one called like Covered All is the name of it, but some of them have their limits. With the Covered All plan, I think it's like $2,500 a year that you can actually put into that. 529, there isn't any limit, but it's specifically set up for educational expenses. And so as you as a parent, you can have your beneficiary be kid number 1. But if that kid doesn't use it all, it can be kid number 2. If nobody uses any of it, you can make yourself the beneficiary. So there's some more options with that. Another thing that can be used, believe it or not, are IRAs, like a Roth IRA, which is a great long-term retirement type of a vehicle that you can pull out monies for educational purposes and that. So, but just make sure before you do something like that you fully understand what you're getting into with that. So, any other questions? Yeah.
Is there any value in savings bonds, like investing money for our kids in that, or is it? I mean, that's something my grandparents used to do, and I don't know if that's.
Yeah, value is different for everybody. Okay. Long-term rates are really horrible for that, but at the same time, if you really want to put something aside that it can be locked in there, you're not going to be tempted to pull it out and use it for something else, they can be a great vehicle for that. Anything else? I'll hang around a little bit if you want to ask other questions. So I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you. I do have a financial blog that you can get periodic articles like the ones that it's attached to your worksheet. That's at jeffedgar.com, where there's a wide variety of other things that are located at Getty Financial. Just to be fair warning on a blog, it's not like I'm sitting there and putting 2 or 3 thoughts. I just don't do that. I use it as an article, usually at least once a month on that. So I'm just not into, I don't have a Twitter account, I'll tell you that as well. So, all right, thank you.